Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Pranams to everyone. The topic of this session is disciplining the monkey mind. The mind is said to be man's best friend and also his worst enemy. How can it be both at the same time? This reminds me of a story of a Brahmin and genie. Let's take a look. The Brahmin and his family lived in the valley of the Vindhya mountains. The valley was severely affected by famine that year. He was clueless how to meet the needs of his family and then remembered about a sage who lived in the forest nearby. So he met the sage and informed him about the situation of the valley. The sage blessed him with a sacred mantra, that of a powerful genie. And he said, on chanting the mantra, the genie will appear and act as per your command. But if the genie is not constantly engaged, then it will eat him up. The Brahmin thought he can keep the genie engaged and took the blessings and left the forest. Returning home, the Brahmin invoked the genie by chanting the mantra, and he asked for all that is needed for himself and his family, be it good food, palace to live in, and much more. The genie delivered all that in a flash. He asked similar things for the residents of the valley, and that too was delivered. Soon, the valley was prosperous, but the genie started pestering him for more work. The Brahmin had reached the end of his wit and had nothing more to ask. The genie sensed this and started chasing him to eat him up. The Brahmin started running for his life. Let's take a pause here. Does the story ring a bell? The genie in the story is the representation of our mind. It is a powerful instrument, but it constantly wants to be engaged in something. On an average, the human mind is said to have more than 60,000 thoughts in a day. We do not have control over these thoughts. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, Jnana Yoga, Arjuna also expounds on this nature and plight of the mind. Let's see. Chanchalam hi manak Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. The four aspects of the mind are highlighted here. Chanchalaha, restless and wandering. Just like the genie, the mind wants to be constantly engaged in one thing or the other. The world is full of distractions and it's being pulled in all the directions. Next is Pramati, impulsive. It runs wild on emotions, fear, anger, greed, and acts in haste in such situations. Balavadridam, turbulent and unyielding. The mind just doesn't know how to give up. And Arjuna says controlling the mind is as difficult as controlling the wind. For an outward mind, whose senses are being pulled by the sense objects, the distractions are quite common. These distractions, which are then colored by our vasanas, that is the raga and the dvesha, likes and the dislikes, turns into attachment or moha. For example, I'm reminded of an ice cream now. The imagination start kicking in, so I can imagine the taste of the ice cream, the flavor of it, which place had the finest ice cream. This chatter goes on and on. All the thoughts are oriented towards this. And it has turned into an intense desire now, and I feel that I should have the ice cream. This will make my day, and I feel incomplete without it, and it is the source of my joy. Now, when this desire is not fulfilled, the anger emerges. We know what happens when we are angry. We forget where we are and which scene we are and whom we are interacting with. We lose our sense of discrimination and we do not take the best course of action that is needed and just react. That is what Shri Krishna says, Buddhi nashat pranashyati. So when one's discrimination is lost, it leads to his downfall. This illustration of distraction to delusion is summary from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, shloka 63 and 64. These are also known as the six enemies of the mind or the intellect, that is Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsaryaha. Let's take the instance of greed. We might have seen that in most of the scams that we have read about in the news or have come across, it would be the millionaires or the billionaires who would be part of it. Why would they risk everything to make more money when they already have enough? The researchers in the business article said that the greed is directly linked to the neurochemistry of the brain. So if we want to understand the neurochemistry in simple sense, it means how the brain cells communicate with each other through chemicals. For example, I communicate with my friend through sending messages on WhatsApp. Similarly, the brain cells communicate or send or receive messages through these chemicals or neurotransmitters. One such neurotransmitter or the chemical called dopamine is what fuels the greed. Dopamine is activated when we have new experiences and it acts as a reward system. It is also known as the happy hormone, which gives momentary pleasure when it is released. The study showed that when people tried to recreate the dopamine by having the same activities, it didn't work. Hence, they tried to scale up and yearned for more and more money to feel the same momentary pleasure again. This reminds me of a shloka from Shankaracharya, which means that these vices, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, reside in the body and they loot us of the discrimination. Hence, he warned us to be alert, Jagrata, Jagrata. The learning from this is we can understand the cause and the consequences of these vices and be alert and to not run behind these objective experiences or the sense objects blindly. Mind is a powerful instrument. However, due to the desires, attachments, expectations, it is agitated, confused, and scattered. The primary function of the mind is interpretation. Samshayatmakaha manaha. The senses or the pancha jnanendriyas interacts with the sense objects and brings in the inputs. The mind interprets and relates it to the intellect. The intellect decides and then the mind interprets the decisions and relates it to the pancha karmendriyas for action. In the Kathopanishad and in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, this is beautifully picturized in the form of a ratha. The ratha or the chariot represents the body, the 5 horses represents the 5 senses, the reins is the mind and the charioteer is the intellect. Let's solve a riddle. Can you shorten this line without touching the line? Well, the solution is to draw a bigger line adjacent to it. Previously, we saw that the solution to the riddle was to draw a bigger line adjacent to the first line. Well, this is also the solution to the riddle of desire. When one gets established in higher purpose, cause, or ideal, the existing selfish desires and lower tendencies naturally become very insignificant and immaterial. If we read through the lives of the freedom fighters, we get to see that they were all unified with one cause, that is nation's independence. And all their self identities, pleasures, or discomforts, nothing came in their way. And all of them were just insignificant or immaterial. Likewise, having a cause or being established in the ideal or a purpose is a great unifier and it steers the ratha or the chariot in one direction. Till now, we have heard about the nature of mind, the causes for agitation and consequences, and the unifying factor. Well, all this knowing has happened in the conscious mind. However, the living happens through the subconscious mind. For the conscious and the subconscious mind to be in sync, for them to act together, takes time, and this change can't happen in isolation, for which a support system is needed, that is satsang, seva, and sadhana. We know the power of satsang, and it's a divine blessing, we are part of it. And the next is seva, which is also known as karma yoga and yagna. On this, I remember a short anecdote from Ramayana which I heard from Swami Swarupananji recently. There was a demon named Tataka. She had strength of 1,000 elephants. Tataka, along with her sons Subahu and Maricha, were continuously disrupting the yagnas performed by the rishis in the forest. Seeing that, Maharshi Vishwamitra reached on to King Dasharatha to send his sons Rama and Lakshmana to the forest to protect the yagna. All of them arrived at the forest, and Tataka attacked again. On Vishwamitra's command, Sri Rama killed Tataka and the yagna was resumed. Later, her sons Subahu and Maricha started disrupting the yagnas. This time, Rama shot arrows at them, and Subahu was killed and Maricha fell miles away from the place. Here, Tataka is the representation of Durasha, that is expectations or stickiness towards the result. Maricha is dosha, that is faultiness or ineffectiveness of the action. And Subahu represents dukkha, that is sorrow or dejection. An outward mind pushes one to be outcome oriented, where the flow is constantly interrupted by the thoughts of what the result would be, and I deserve this result for all the efforts put in. So this false expectations leads to ineffective work and dejection. However, when the work is performed with yagna bhava, that is as an offering to the Lord protects the yagna. We can see this in the anecdote, where in the presence of Rama, the demons Tataka, Subahu and Maricha were killed or subdued. When we can also observe this, for example, while preparing Naivedya, where in the preparation it is done with full devotion and focused mind, and one is more action oriented here rather than the outcome oriented. This attitude of Ishwararpitam Nechayakritam purifies the mind. In the selfishness where we are owning the doership and the enjoyership, it rattles the mind, where in the selflessness the mind is settled or in samadhana. Next is sadhana. Guruji says, before we proceed with questioning who am I, first question where am I? On this, I remember a story from Pandit Ramakrishna Tales. Pandit Ramakrishna was once challenged in the court to put a 6-foot tall, heavy built wrestler into a small cup, and the solution should not be a reflection of him. He was given a day's time to fulfill this task, and while he was walking back home, he saw the kids playing and the solution struck him. So the next day morning, he investigated what the wrestler was fond of and got to know he was very fond of laddus. So he instructed the servant to lure him with laddus, that is, show him but not let him eat it. So the servant did the same, and just before the assembly started, he placed the laddu in the cup in the assembly hall. The wrestler was fixated on the cup. The assembly got started, and Pandit Ramakrishna claimed that the wrestler was present in the cup. Everyone was shocked because they could see the wrestler right in front of their eyes in the hall. Pandit Ramakrishna explained to the court that a person is where his mind is, even though the body of the wrestler is visible in the court, but his mind was fixated in the cup where the laddu is present, so he is present in the cup. Mind wanders between the past and the future. The focus of the sadhana is to get the mind to be present in the present. Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali Maharshi is one of the sadhana to balance the mind. It has 8 limbs and the locus moves from the gross to the subtle. That is, the gross part is used to control the subtle part, and the subtle part is used to control the subtler part. The first limb is yama, that is external disciplines. There are 5 yamas: ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. These are also the universal principles. For example, if we hit someone or lie to someone, we are bothered naturally. So these yamas stop us from engaging in something which brings about an imbalance. The next limb is niyama, internal disciplines or commitments. The 5 niyamas are shaucha, that is cleanliness or being organized; santoshaha, being contented; tapaha, means to burn, that is breaking the comfort zones; swadhyayaha, self reflection or study of scriptures; ishvara pranidhanaha, that is devoting or surrendering this instrument in the service of the Lord. Next is asana, that is to balance the body. Pranayama is to balance the breath. Pratyahara is managing the senses. Senses are like the GPS which helps us to navigate. But when the destination is blurry, then the system goes haywire. Instinctively, we try to keep the senses in place by avoiding the sense objects. But we cannot physically avoid these objects all the time. Hence, for the senses to be intact, the destination has to be clear. Then, the senses can be steered away from anything which is detrimental to this purpose or destination. Next is Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Previously, we had taken a pause from the story of the Brahmin and the genie. The Brahmin rushed to the sage in the forest to save his life. The sage advised him to fix a pole in the center of the courtyard and to order the genie to go up and down the pole until he is called upon. The Brahmin returned home and followed the instructions. With this, he was able to use the service of the genie when needed and to engage him in the pole when he is not required. The Brahmin used the support of a pole to keep the genie engaged. Similarly, the restless mind needs a support to keep it single pointed. So, this support could be an object, it could be a thought. This support is also known as dharana, and the uninterrupted focus on this dharana is known as dhyana. And absorption of the mind is samadhi. Unlike Ashtanga Yoga, there are many spiritual practices. One can tune into what's best for them based on self reflection and Guru's guidance. Would like to conclude with Anne Frank's quote, which says, "We all live with the objective of being happy. Our lives are all different but yet the same. The mind and the senses hold on to the sense objects, considering that it is the source of happiness, but the mind is balanced and calm when it is unaffected by them rather than in the seeking of the sense objects." Sri Krishna answers Arjuna's question on how to keep the mind intact in the next shloka of Dhyana Yoga. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. He says abhyasaha, that is being consistent and sincere in the practices. Here the support system for the mind we discussed was satsang, seva and sadhana. Vairagyaha, that is to give up the hold on the sense objects through dama and shama, and to detach from the results of the action, that is kartritva and bhoktritva through seva. With this preparation, the mind is equipped with the inner wealth, that is the Shat Sampatti, and it is ready or getting ready for the inward journey. Thank you all for watching. Hari Om.